You argue that morality, in your view, is about the well-being of man, while in my worldview, it is about the well-being of an ideology, Islam. Here, already, you reveal the subjectivity of your definition. The term well-being is abstract and is interpreted differently depending on the cultural and philosophical context. What you consider well-being in liberal societies, for example, may be considered degeneration or alienation in other cultural systems. Morality in Islam is not subjective. It is based on the word of God, who is the creator of the world and its rules. God does not arbitrarily define morality, but reveals it as consistent with human nature and true well-being, which goes beyond the short-term material satisfaction that liberal morality often promotes.
Intro. The human condition in this world is such that confines our investigative ability to the boundaries of our physical limitations. The word being refers almost exclusively to our natural state. Our immaterial self is also part of our natural state. Supernatural claims have low epistemic value or truth value because the supernatural, if it even exists, is not manifesting, if at all, or at the very least, not consistently in the natural world. Truth, unlike logical consistency, must have an external reference. It must therefore correspond to a common reality. Otherwise, truth is subjective, or my truth, that by definition doesn't entail any epistemic value to a third person. The difference between statements and arguments. Describing one's beliefs must pass certain scrutinizing to have truth value to a third person. An argument must not fail in logic in an apparent way. An argument, therefore, must be valid. But also, the premises of an argument must relate to an external common reality that defines truth or common truth, which is the same thing. Personal truth is not truth. In other words, the argument must be sound. Even if Muslims claim to have supernatural insights, unless they are themselves supernatural beings, they are still bound by the same natural limitations, like everyone else. Therefore, the rejection of reason and empirical evidence that is systemic, if not fundamental, in many schools of thought in Islam, is by definition not a practical pursuit of truth, is blind faith, with negative moral implications. So blind faith is not just not practical, has also negative moral implications. Philosophers have struggled to define well-being for centuries. The world being, in philosophical terms, refers to our material, but also our immaterial self, our Platonic self, both part of our manifestation in the natural world. So the immaterial, or our Platonic self, our being, is also part of the natural world. It's not because many people confuse that. They think the Platonic stuff is supernatural. No, they are still manifestation. We are natural beings, and we have an immaterial self. So they are still part of the natural world. That's what I'm trying to say. Supernatural being, not beings, supernatural being in the Platonic sense, in other words, our immaterial self, supernatural being, even if it exists, is something beyond our investigative ability. So even if there are some kind of Platonic essences in the supernatural realm, it's over our investigative ability. We can only investigate what manifests in reality, in the natural world. When defining well-being, we are therefore referring to our natural well-being. How to better our natural, material, and immaterial self. Our material self, or our physiology, is bounded by medical rules. If I drink battery acid, I objectively harm my health, and that is not an opinion. So, if Islam said drinking battery acid is good, that makes no difference. In the same way, our immaterial self can be in a better or worse state related to natural factors that have to do with our human condition in this natural world. If I disable or restrain my mind to Islamic blind faith demands, I harm my well-being objectively in this natural world. Everyone understands that a wise man who uses his reason is in a better state than a dogmatist who rejects reason. It's evident that science works to better humanity, whereas superstition doesn't work. Better or worse are just scales, like plus and minus. So imagine a ruler. That is a ruler. Okay, so just imagine a ruler. So the ruler, the investigative side or prospect of the ruler is to measure height. And that is minus height, that is plus height. Better or worse is the same thing. So it's a ruler that the investigative prospect or reflection is not height, is instead the human condition in this world. Or someone can say morality. But the human condition in this world is more appropriate. Okay, so this is just. So better is the plus, worse is the minus. Okay, so the investigative subject of better or worse is the human condition in this world. I already touched on that in my intro, but that is the key to answering this kind of dilemmas relating to old questions, or what is really better or worse, or how we ought to live. So in order to be able to answer this kind of questions, we must understand what is the human condition in this world, because this ruler reflects or investigates the human condition in this world.
You say that if Allah gave an immoral command, I would consider it moral simply because it is in the Quran. This argument is problematic and ignores the nature of Islam. God, according to Islam, is omniscient and wise. His commands are not arbitrary or blind, but are in harmony with human nature and the well-being of creation. The Quran and Sunnah include principles that promote social justice, protection of the weak, and enhancement of spiritual and material well-being. The idea that God would give immoral commands is based on an anthropocentric projection that does not correspond to divine nature, as we understand it in Islam. God does not contradict reason, but transcends it with wisdom.
In a previous correspondence with Eldin, I stated that if Allah said the most apparent immorality imaginable, the most disgusting immorality imaginable in the Quran, he as a Muslim would have still considered it moral. Something that is logical evidence against Islamic morality, that is not virtue-based or consequential, but instead deontological. Islamic morality is not radically concerned with suffering and well-being. It values submission to divine rules. And then he gave a common response to this critique. He said, Allah, by virtue of his nature, will never command something immoral. So he said the standard response to this critique. But the problem is, he answered in a pragmatic way, a logical argument. That doesn't work. That is an error. A hypothesis doesn't need to happen in the real world to demonstrate logical truth. Let me give you an example. If I had bionic speed and ran 100 meters in 1 second, that would have made me the fastest man on earth. So that statement is true regardless if it's probable to do that practically. Okay, just because that is not probable to practically happen, that doesn't mean my statement is not probably true. In fact, my statement is still undeniably true. Then, how does he know the new phenomenal immoral commands of Allah are immoral in the first place? If Islamic morality is not radically related to suffering and well-being, how he knows? The new state of what God says is immoral, so he will never say that. How you know? If your morality is not radically related to suffering and well-being, how you know the new stuff God says are immoral in the first place, so you reject them? Okay, but there is another issue with Islamic deontological morality. In other words, morality that just means following commands. The subject cannot be a moral agent. So if I just follow commands, I am not really a moral agent, am I? Let me give you an example. If I program a robot with the perfect Islamic moral code, is this robot moral? No, he hasn't got a soul. He doesn't understand what he's doing. He's just doing. A robot can never be moral because he doesn't really knows what he's doing. It just follows what he's programmed to do. So Islamic morality doesn't really judge moral character. It judges one aspect of human quality, which is submission. So now see the logical irony, or I don't know what's the word. A Muslim Hitler is better than a non-Muslim Gandhi.
The well-being you mention depends on how you define it. The liberal worldview considers the well-being to be a state of individual freedom and material prosperity. But this view ignores the spiritual needs, social relationships, and moral coherence that are essential parameters of human existence. What empirical evidence can you offer to prove that the liberal well-being is superior? Western societies, based on liberal ethics, are facing increasing rates of alienation, mental illness, and social breakdown. The social health you invoke is, in fact, a patchwork of temporary solutions to deep problems that the system itself has caused. You state that common sense considers dictatorship immoral because it goes against the natural need for freedom. But again, the concept of freedom is subjective. Islam proposes a balanced freedom that respects moral and social obligations, while liberal freedom often leads to individualism, egocentrism, and social alienation. The blind worldview that you attribute to Islam does not exist.
When judging political systems, we should avoid cherry-picking negative examples and claim these represent the whole of the political system. Societies are made by imperfect individuals. But at the same time, a political system should be judged by its application to societies, but in an honest way. So a political system is not being judged only in its ideal state, that is communism. So communism, for example, ideally, in an ideal world is good, but in practice is terrible. So a political system should be judged by its application to societies, but not by cherry picking. This is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so we need to judge political systems in an honest way. And honestly, liberal systems, despite its expected failures because societies are made by humans, are doing magnitudes better than Islamic societies. If we exclude the oil-rich countries, like Saudi Arabia, Qatar and these kind of countries, that are just people sitting on top of a treasure and buying Western luxury, the Muslim world is in a worse state than the liberal world, almost in every qualitative category. But political systems should also be judged by its fundamental principles. Here, I will argue that your view on liberal societies is a straw man. The true definition of a liberal society is not maximizing individual freedom, is instead not unnecessarily restrain individual freedom. Obviously, the common good should take precedent over individual freedom. And obviously, absolute freedom is bad. And none of that apply to liberal societies in the first place. Now, the reason a secular approach to well-being is better than a superstitious approach to well-being is because the one is related to reason and evidence and therefore has practical application to pragmatic actions that makes the objective human state in the natural world better than the other one that is based on superstition and serves dogmatic aberrations about the well-being of an idea instead of the well-being of people.
Ethics in Islam are based on divine wisdom and are revealed as being in accordance with human nature. In contrast, liberal ethics, which depends on subjective interpretations, often fail to offer consistent and timeless guidance. Islam is not opposed to the well-being of man. On the contrary, it promotes it at all levels: spiritual, moral, and material. Sharia incorporates principles that protect life, family, property, honor, and religion. The fact that your secular worldview fails to grasp this balance is not an argument against Islam, but it shows the limits of your own philosophical approach. Your argument that only logical and empirical evidence can investigate objective truth is limiting. Morality is not an exclusively empirical phenomenon. You cannot measure love, sacrifice, or spiritual fulfillment with scientific tools. Islam recognizes the need to combine reason and revelation for a full understanding of truth. In conclusion, it is easy for anyone to see that your argument is based on a subjective, anthropocentric conception of morality that does not take into account the spiritual and temporal dimensions of human existence. In contrast, Islam offers a coherent, objective framework of morality that promotes true well-being, material, moral, and spiritual. If you want to criticize Islam, you must first recognize the limits of your own worldview and examine your own moral foundation with the same rigor that you attempt to apply to Islam.
Okay, guys. Yes, now I will sing a song, my song. Okay. So I made some lyrics, and I'm just waiting for the song to start. How awkward. People are waiting. Yes? Take your time. Who cares? People can wait. They don't have anything better to do. Take your time. Don't worry. We have time. Okay. Weeks are howling louder. My mind has slipped away on a journey heading home. To the edge of the heavens, I was searching for your love, but I couldn't find you. Still I'm clinging to my home, and I'm right behind you if I don't make it home. With my last fading breath, I will hum our song. Cast the stars on your bed before I fade alone. Cast on the bed, your halo, your halo. Finally be where I belong, where I belong. Something is missing, a guitar, and it was the best guitar anyway. Shadows growing longer, the light begins to fade. I'm still chasing all the dreams that we kept in the distance, for the silence pulls me in. I won't stop calling, every heartbeat that you breathe will keep me going if I don't make it home. With my last fading breath, I will hum a song. Cast the stars on your bed before I fade alone. Wear a crown of thread like a halo, your halo, before the shadows fade. I will carry your grace to my lonely grave. You will light my way like the sun, the day. Finally be where I belong, where I belong. One, two, three, so 1, 2, 3, go! Where